Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Did you know that artificial intelligence plus creativity can produce a cash vomiting business for you? If only you understood the nuances around creativity, artificial intelligence, and business intelligence. Today, I brought on the show an expert in the person of Dr. Roger Smith. This is a man who has had a foray into the realm of business, using his creativity to weather the storm, break out of the 9 to 5 grind, and then he has also taken that further into the realm of simulation, robotics, and artificial intelligence. So he's going to bring all of his world of experiences to the table. He's going to bring it to bear as we begin to unpack today's conversation, which is titled The Business of Artificial Intelligence and Creativity. Without much ado, I'm going to bring him up stage. I believe I didn't even do justice to his introduction, so I'm going to give him another shot at that as I do bring him up stage. Hi, Dr. Roger. How you doing? Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself as we
Uh,
get it started?
sure. Good afternoon. It's good to be here. So, if you can tell by my lack of hair, I have a few years of experience. And unfortunately, that is actually a few decades of experience. Some of it
Wow.
happens before AI is really useful, and some of it after AI is really useful. So, we'll probably bounce back and forth between those two contexts. Um, I finished my graduate work in computer science and started working in the defense industry, and quickly started migrated my way to flight simulators and vehicle simulators. So I spent a number of years building the simulators that train people on how to fly a plane or how to drive a tank or how to fly a helicopter. And there was always, even in the old days, there was always artificial intelligence in those simulators that was playing the bad guys. And the bad guys gradually got smarter and smarter. First, they were kind of dumb and very predictable, but they got smarter
Mm,
and smarter and smarter. And that's what I did for a couple of decades. And then I spent another decade in hospitals working on surgical robots. So these
mm,
surgical robots, they're not independent. They're linked to the human's movement. So the surgeon moves his or her hands and feet, and the robot mimics that, but with much more precision. And so there's much
mm.
less wavering and things like that. And then, of course, when the large language models were actually when deep learning became a thing, that was a couple of years before the large language models came out, and only a computer scientist, which I was, were
Mm.
really equipped to use them and put them to work. And then when the LLMs came out, suddenly all this AI power that previously only well-trained computer scientists could use, suddenly everybody could use it. A waiter could use it. Admin and account, everybody suddenly had access to these magnificent tools that they could leverage for their job. So that's the kind of the journey I've been on since when I first had hair to when I don't have hair.
Wow, thank you for that chronology. And I think there's something we can unpack in that just a little bit more before we delve into some other areas of our conversation. And that would be, can you tell us a bit about your perspective on creativity and how creativity actually helped you to turn your gift, skill, talent into a business?
Yep.
And can you help us generate that connection? Because there are many people who have creativity but lack profitability. There are many broke creatives out there. And part of what I try to do to help people who are listening is to help them go from idea to increased income and from concept to cash flow. So if there's someone right now listening to you who's about to make that journey or make that leap from concept to cash flow, I believe your story can help them, make the most of that experience and journey. So you want to go for it?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna first confess that I took a safer path than some artists or creatives do. I did
Mm,
not bet my career on my creativity all by itself. Like many people, I went into a 9 to 5 job that was secure, that had insurance, and you go to work 9 o'clock and knock out at 5 o'clock. And I was working for one of the biggest companies in the world. Now they're known as Lockheed Martin. Back then, they hadn't acquired everything yet. But
Mm.
they essentially wanted me to do a specific job that was defined by my position and the department I was in and what project they were working on at the time. So I would go to work and do my job. And I always felt like I had a part of myself that was more creative where I could do more if only somebody would ask me to do more. I could do
Mm.
things that were more original. I could tackle some things that I could build from scratch. But at first, especially when I was in my 20s, you're waiting for somebody to tell you that you should do it or to give you permission to do that creative thing.
Mm.
You're
Mm.
holding it inside. And so I think with like a lot of people that seed is in them and they go home. I was actually would go home and I would draw. I enjoyed drawing. So I would draw pictures and a little bit of my creativity leaked out that way. But that was never
Mm.
jumping to profitability. That wasn't going that
Mm.
direction. Anyway, so as I went through my job building these simulators, I noticed that a lot of my peers, as smart as they were, there was so much about our field they didn't know. They didn't know, they knew their niche, but the projects themselves were much bigger and they didn't understand all of the science, all of the programming, all the pieces that went into a simulator, for example. So I thought, well, maybe I could create a course and teach that course, and then they could come and take the course and they'd learn a much broader set of skills. And like everybody, I thought, as soon as I had that thought, I was like, who am I? I can't teach other
Mm.
people. I'm just one of the masses. I'm one person among thousands or hundreds. So a lot of self doubt that I was worthy to teach this class. So it took
Mm.
me a year or so realizing the more often I saw that my coworkers didn't know something that I did know, that I had something to teach. So my creativity came from taking my knowledge and building a course out of it that I could teach. And I found a university that needed a course like that, and I went in and started teaching it in the university. So my first breakout was my salary was my main thing that paid the bills and made things stable. And on the side, I got this little bit of teaching at a university, a semester of adjunct professor teaching. And if you've ever taught as an adjunct, an outsider at a university, that's not much money. I mean, these days, I
Mm.
think a course you might get paid $4,000 for a semester,
Mm.
maybe. And back then, I think I was getting 2,000, something like that. But it was a start. Um, and I was like, okay, I'm accomplishing what I set out to do. I'm making a little extra money, and these people are learning something that they didn't know, and it was very rewarding because I remember specifically an older man named Aaron. I won't give his last name. An older man named Aaron came to me after class one day, and he said, I've been working in this field longer than you have, at least 10 years longer." And he said, "But a
Mm.
lot of the stuff you're teaching me, I never knew that." He said, "I
Wow.
knew how the networking worked, how you connected two simulators together and got them to talk to each other so you could have a dogfight and it looked great. But as far as the graphics and the AI and the user interface," he said, "I had no idea how any of that worked. And so I'm actually learning that from your class." Very encouraging. So I'm making a little money, and somebody takes my class and says, there's a company that offers classes like this for professionals, not in the university setting where you sign up and you go to a hotel room for 3 days and take the class. And they
Mm.
hooked me up with that company, and my $2,000 a semester went from that to about $10,000 a year initially, the first year I taught the class. And then it ramped
Mm.
up to 60,000 a year after we got the ball rolling. And it wasn't my intention to give the numbers there, but they just jumped out. So
No
anyway,
worries. You're safe.
so on one side, I'm still doing my day job, and on the other side, I'm making extra money by teaching for a couple of days every month in a hotel room. And I had to cover those days with my vacation days from my day job. Um, but that's kind of how I turned that creativity, that realizing that there was a demand in the industry, in my company, and then noticing that it exists in all these companies. There was a demand for this knowledge that nobody had packaged yet. And so I turned that into a business. And I taught that class for 10 years. And it was still as hot after 10 years as it was the first year, right? There was still, because there's always a new wave of people coming into the profession. Some of them come right from school into the profession, and others come from the side. They were working somewhere else, and they come in from the side with expertise in something else, but wanting to learn it. And then finally, after 10 years, I was like, I can't teach this again. I've been through this material so many times. I just so I sunsetted it, and moved on to something else.
Wow, that's quite the story. Now, can you tell us what creativity actually means to you? Because when I get people on this show, I like to get their perspective on the subject of creativity because one of the things that really inspired me to delve into creativity and provide resources for people all over the world to help them boost their creativity because I found that there was there was a lack of accurate, well cooked, well baked information on creativity out there. There was lots of half baked stuff out there.
Hmm.
And part of what I do with this podcast is to curate well baked resources on creativity for my listeners. So, would you care to share with us what your perspective on creativity is? What creativity means to you?
Sure. That I have to try to not be half baked when I come off here. Um, so I think our creativity, it's not the one we're talking about when we're adults, is not probably what you were born with. It's probably something that got shaped in you as you grew, as you learned, as you experienced life, and you saw that you had the ability and somebody else had the interest in
Hmm.
something that you could create. And I say interest because, like, for example, I was drawing on my own time in the evenings just for fun, but there was no feedback for that. Here on my
Hmm.
wall in my office, I can see three of my pieces of artwork that I drew 30 years ago that are still hanging,
Hmm.
and nobody but my family has ever seen them. Uh, so I wasn't really stimulated. But when I started creating those courses, I found that there was feedback, positive feedback, and encouragement. And in addition to the financial rewards that they brought an ego reward that
Hmm.
told me I'm doing something that's actually valuable. So I'm trying to
Hmm.
tie that to the idea that you can express your creativity in so many ways, but not all of them are going to be embraced, valued, and praised by the world around you. And the
Hmm.
ones that are the ones that are going to reinforce you the desire, the passion to keep going.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And the reason I asked you that question was to set a baseline because we're going to proceed from there. Now, the world has taken a new turn with the advent. Permit me to use the word advent because it's not necessarily something that was, you know, discovered just now. It's something that has been there cooking for the past few years. But just permit me to say, with the advent of artificial intelligence, right?
Mhm.
So now, how do we combine artificial intelligence with creativity to produce a business that can generate some decent income and decent cash flow? Because I believe that there's a lot of people who are already cashing out from this new wave of artificial intelligence. And without being too geeky, without having to create a simulator, without having to build a robot, do you have any idea how anyone can leverage this new wave of artificial intelligence using their creative capacity to turn that into cash flow?
Yes. I think this, and I think we're at a sweet spot right now. And by right now, I don't mean, oh, you've got to do it today, but
Mm,
starting a year ago and extending for a couple more years in the future. I think we're at a sweet spot where an individual or a small group has the opportunity to build something that they could turn into a unique business. Kind of
mm,
like when we got our first smartphones, when we got the iPhone, and people started building apps. And at first, every app was small, it was pretty basic, it was built by one or two people. And if that app was popular, they could move on and grow into five people. And then who knows how big from there. So I think we're at a spot like that now with artificial intelligence. So previously, if you wanted to build something, you would do your research by going and getting books about it or Googling on the internet about the data. And then you'd start reading and synthesizing all of that information yourself. Now, with AI, if you have an idea, I think I can make, well, let me tell you an app. No, it's not time yet to tell you an app I made. Um,
mm,
Gets into the next phase here. But if you have an idea for an app you want to create, you can just start talking to the AI, explaining your idea to it, and asking it for how would you do this? How could one person do this? What software programs would I need? What hardware would I need? Like you're doing a podcast, so what microphones would be best for a
mm,
podcast of this type? And what kind of camera should I have? Should I use earbuds or an open mic or open speakers? And the AI, amazingly, I was going to say unfortunately, but it's amazingly, it knows everything because literally
mm,
they've been trained for years. They've been training it on everything on the internet. So it's not something that you're not going to stumble on a topic that the AI doesn't know.
mm,
So I think your first step is become friends with an AI and start talking to it like a really brilliant person who is also incredibly personable with you.
wow.
And the most common ones, everybody knows about Chat GPT. That might be your
Mm,
tool. Or maybe it's Claude, or maybe it's Gemini, or maybe it's Llama. I want to totally, it's nobody's using Llama hardly, but Mistral out of France, or DeepSeek out of China. It could be any one of those. But you become friends with one of those AI tools and start talking to it about what you're trying to envision, and it will teach you. And if your creativity involves coding and app building, the new apps, they actually write the code for you, and
mm.
the code mostly works. I want to do this with my hand. Mostly.
Yes. Yeah, and that's actually true because AI needs someone to drive it to produce
Mhm.
reasonable result, to produce good result, to produce something valuable. And I think where most people get it wrong is that they want AI to drive them instead of being the driver. So AI cannot replace your creativity, and so you still need to work on that aspect of yourself, of your craft, in order to make the most of what you have inside of you as you bring it out to the world, right? But having said that, I want us to talk about your journey a little bit more because you made mention of something while you were, a professor and you were teaching, and the idea of creating a course came to you. The first thing that hit you was self doubt
Mm.
and inner criticisms. The voice in your head started telling you, "Why do you think you can do this? Who are you? Who am I? Why me? Who would listen to me? What if no one buys? What if no one listens?" So I want you to take us through that journey because there's not many professors I know, and I know quite a number of them. There's not many professors I know who have been able to break out of that box of, the regular pattern that you have successfully proven to do. So, apart from doing that for the benefit of other professors who may be listening to this, generally anyone being a layman or an expert in what they do, how can someone overcome that doubt, that self doubt, that anxiety, that you know that voice in their head that holds them back and prevents them from turning their ideas to something tangible, a tangible and profitable creation.
Hmm. Yeah, the fear and the self doubt. I think everybody needs to hear that it's inside everybody. It's not just you. If you're the newest person in the company or at your job, you have it, and the people that are senior to you, they have it, and the bosses, they have it. That self doubt, that thinking that I may not be good enough to do this project or to strike out on my own, that's in everybody. You're not unique if you think that, and maybe that helps if you know that the people above you that you report to and that you look up to, if you know that they have those same self doubts, maybe that helps you to realize that you don't have to listen to those doubts. Um, at some point, you're going to have to throw yourself into the water. You're going to have to just decide and do it. And for me, when I started making these courses, I didn't decide and do it in a week. It took me probably months of wrestling with my own self doubt, my wondering if I could do it before I actually did something. And the first time I created this course and walked into the classroom and taught it, I was so scared. I was so scared that the students would think I didn't know anything, or they would right away see if I knew 80% of it, they would right away see the 20% I didn't know and go right for it, like a dog going for your jugular. Those are all the fears you're going through. Or like the older guy named Aaron that I mentioned in my example, that people like him would be there and they would scoff at me. That never happened. Never happened.
Wow.
I went into the classroom and I started sharing what I did know, and they were eating it up. They were like, this is what I came for. I didn't know this. I was looking for this." And they're not so much looking at you, the individual, or judging you by your background. They're there listening to what you're sharing, and they're judging the material. And so if the material is good, they're going to be satisfied. And I learned early when we walked into a subject I didn't know about, that 20% that I hadn't learned yet, one of two things I would do. Number one is I would ask the classroom, I would say, "Do any of you know about how this works? Do you understand how the windowing function in this kind of computer works? Because I don't know." And if somebody did know, I would let them tell us so we would all learn. And then the second thing that I would do, if nobody knew, I would just say, "I don't know. We'll try to find out, but I don't know." And I think people respect that. If you admit that you don't know something, or you can't handle, or you can't answer a problem, just say it, and they'll be like, "Okay, I didn't come here thinking you were the Bible and you knew everything. I came here thinking you knew more than me. You don't have to know everything." Anyway, that's not how to get there, but that's kind of how you're going to feel when you start doing this. That's how you'll feel, and maybe you'll handle your the part of you that's ignorant better than other people who try to obfuscate and pretend. If you try to pretend that you know everything and you're perfect, they're going to get you. They'll see through that.
Yeah, true. And that's interesting. Now, I want us to take a detour a little bit and talk about your process of ideation. How do you come up with ideas? Because obviously, there's the part of being able to generate ideas
Mhm.
and pick the right ideas that would be relevant to people, that people will be interested in. I think you made mention of that
Yeah.
in your initial response to one of my questions. So, what's your process for ideation and picking out, the right ideas that have the right interest or that has valuable interest, monetizable interest?
Hmm. So the kind of the one of the bases, or the bottom level. I'm going to reach over here and get it. I carry around a notebook, a blank notebook, And when I
Hmm.
have an idea, I write it down. I have a half a dozen of these notebooks going back for years. But I'll write down the idea, I put a date on it. That's important. Put
Hmm.
down the date, and then what the idea is. Start and sketch it if you can. This was this. I don't know if video, but this is a diagram. It's a very bad diagram, but it captured the idea. So I diagrammed the idea, write out what it is, and now it's not just floating in my head. Because if I
Hmm.
don't write it down, the idea that might be good today, tomorrow is gone. It slipped
Hmm.
away. I forgot that I had the idea. And maybe in a month, I go, oh, you know what? I had that idea. I forgot about that. It can just slip away. So, step one is to have, for me, it's a notebook. You can have an app on your phone, but however you're going to do it, when you have that idea, start writing it down, capture everything you can think of about that idea. So it becomes more permanent. And one of the reasons I date it is because when it starts moving backwards in time, I can see how much time is passing that I haven't taken action. And that
Hmm.
motivates me. If I look at it and go, it was only 2 pages back, that might seem like nothing. But if I notice, well, that was 3 weeks ago and I still haven't done anything. So capturing it in notebooks is one of my first steps, first tools. And then I return to it when I have another piece of it. So you can sit down in your free time with your notebook and look back over your last three ideas and say, you know what, I have a new something to add and add. And so you've got the beginning, something starting to build there. So that's what I do to get it started. And a lot of the ideas I have, they turn out to not be valuable. You go along and you're like, I don't know how this is going to turn into anything valuable. I'll give you two examples of those, one old and one new. So, an old one, I'm a scuba diver, and we go scuba diving in the Florida Keys regularly. Well, in the Florida Keys, there are some special dive sites that the boats go to all the time because there's either a wreck down there or a statue or a coral formations that's well known. And so the dive boats go there all the time. Well, scuba divers have a logbook as well that says on this day I went to the wreck of the USS Clyde. It was at 100 feet, and here's what we saw. I saw the barnacles and these kind of fish, and they fill out this log sheet about what they did. Well, we were on a vacation in the Florida Keys one day, and I went, everybody's going to see Christ of the Abyss, and they're going to see these two wrecks. Why don't I create a plastic sheet that goes in a standard dive log that already has all that data filled out on it, and it just has blanks where you write in what you felt, but and there's a picture, a really pretty color picture of the statue or um, the ship at the bottom. I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. So I drove up and down the Keys, and I went to a photography shop and asked them for how much to license photos of these underwater scenes. And I went to a printer and asked how much does it cost to print the sheets. Anyway, I worked up the whole how much is this going to cost? And I was like, production cost on one of these plastic sheets at the time is going to be like $5. I don't think I can sell this thing for a profit if it really cost me $5 to produce each one of them. So that was an idea. I'm like, okay, this is a good idea. And went through it, and am I going to make this into a business? And finally decided I can't make a profit with it. So I set that aside, and I didn't do it. Some 6, 7 years later, I go down to the Keys. I walk into a dive shop. That product is in the dive shop on the shelves. The exact same thing that I just described, produced by somebody else. And I say good luck to them because maybe now costs are cheaper and they're making a profit at it. But it turns out that was a good idea. But at the time I had it financially, it wasn't going to work.
Hmm.
So that's one idea. Kind of long. You want to hear the second one?
Yep. Go
Okay,
for it.
second one. I write novels. I write novels about robotic surgery in the future, kind of science fictiony, and a couple of them they're right there behind me. There's one, two, three, four of them.
Wow, I think that's a great book idea, if I must say.
You like
Yeah,
it? Okay.
yeah.
There, I've made one sale. Okay. So I write these novels, and I also work with the large language models, the generative AI programs. And I usually, like, if I'll write a chapter of a novel, I will give it to the AI and say, "Can you review this and give me critique, give me feedback? What did I do wrong, right? Did I make a mistake?" And it gives me some really good feedback. And it will even write a paragraph for me. Like, I asked it recently, I was like, "I'm writing a novel and I have this character that's in Africa, and I need to know what a boma dinner is." And I
Hmm.
barely knew what that was. So it wrote me a couple of paragraphs that described that cultural way of eating. And normally I would have had to go and research that with Google, search, 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 and put it together myself. But it wrote me a
Yeah.
paragraph. Okay, so I'm doing that. Well, recently, Claude came out with the capability to write, to prompt it, to give it a prompt, and it will write a program for you. And so I gave it a prompt and I said, I want you to create an app for me that will write an entire book, one chapter at a time. So
Hmm.
I will give you the genre that I want it to be in. Maybe it's adventure, maybe it's fantasy, maybe it's romance, whatever. I will tell you the names of the characters. I will give you about 10 pieces of data about this story. And then I'm going to hit write, and you're going to write chapter one. And then I'm going to read chapter one. And then I'm going to, there's a box at the bottom if you want to change it. Oh, I didn't like the way this is going. You tell it to change something. You click the button and it writes chapter two. This
Hmm.
isn't to create books written by AI. This is for somebody who's a reader who wakes up in the morning and goes, I want to read a story about pirates fighting with dragons. That's what I want to read today. You could go to this
Hmm.
app and tell it, that's what I want to read. Start writing for me. Okay, so I created that app. Works fine. I'm a
Wow.
little afraid because it writes as well as I do almost. I threw the almost in there. My ego couldn't stand it. It writes really well. So I made the app. I put the link out on the internet, and I said, "Here's an app for readers. It's not to replace your favorite writer. It's to give the reader kind of any book they want at a moment's notice. And you can tell it, I want a short story, I want a long story, I want an infinite story, whatever. And it'll try to wrap that story up, a short story in 8 chapters, a full novel in 80 chapters, like that. Then I sat back and looked at it and went, that was really creative. Is it possible
Yeah.
to make money with this?
Hmm.
And my answer was no, because once the idea is out of the box, anybody who understands how Claude works as well as I
Yeah.
do can make their own copy of this same app.
Hmm.
So it was a creative creation that I brought to fruition, but I just didn't see a way to make money with it. And so it's out
Yet.
there. Yet, that's right. It's out there. But you know what happens? Sometimes these seeds that don't work out, they lead to something bigger that will work out. So you don't want to
Absolutely.
not do it. Do it and see if this one doesn't make money, the bigger idea that's going to come later, that might be where the money is at.
Absolutely. And the reason why I said that, you just never know, which is in line with how you concluded your thought. There's something I call the cycle of creativity, and I use that to explain how sometimes things that start small just turn into something magnificent, something big. It starts from the first phase, which is pre-creation, which is before the creation process starts, probably the ideation process, which you've already walked us through. And then there's the actual creation process. And then there's the pro-creation process or the post-creation process, which is what happens after you've created and you're figuring out, how you can put this in the hands of people, or you're trying to actually sell it, or you're trying to get people's feedback and you're trying to, make money from that idea that you've created. And then there's the recreation process. I know generally recreation suggests to people that, oh, leisure. But if you look at it from the perspective I'm putting out there, recreation means you go back, you iterate on that, and that's when the snowball effect could come in. That's when another light bulb moment could happen that will just put a twist on that, or put a spin on that experience and turn it into a phenomenon that, boom, turns you into the next, founder of something the
Yeah,
world, is crazy about.
that's right.
Having said that, there's something about your journey that also interests me that I feel like we should do a deep dive into. And it is the fact that when you started turning your ideas, turning your knowledge, turning your gifts and your skills to, you know, creations, packaging it in forms of product that could be sold, like courses. You said the first year you made like $2,000. The second year you made like $10,000. As far as I'm concerned, that did not look like the overnight success story that we typically hear,
Right.
right? And it meant that you had to stick to the plan. You had a stickability of purpose. You had a persistence. Something somewhere, I believe, kept you going despite the odds. What was that thing, and you know, how did you develop that staying power to see that idea through for 10 years, and ensure that it became actually profitable and yielded,
Mhm.
good results?
I think two things happened. One is once I got the courses started and I was working to fill in that 20% I didn't know, um, the more I read, the more passionate I became about knowing the whole story, about
Mm,
fill, completing this puzzle, about having every piece of the puzzle available in the course, and being able to walk into a course with almost any audience and knowing what it is that they needed for their job. And so I just became more and more passionate about having my own understanding be complete. And so that moved me forward to some degree. But then something happened that I didn't plan on. So I'm working during the daytime in the simulation industry, and I'm preparing the course material in the evenings and weekends, and I'm teaching the courses on my vacation days. After a couple of years, I started to become known in the industry, not just to my students, but in the industry as somebody who really had a good grasp of all
mm,
the aspects of military simulation at the time. And so I would go to events and people would recognize me from having been in the course. Oh, you helped me so much. I work at this company and I've been able to pass that on. And then people would ask me, so are you available for a consulting job maybe? Maybe you could come and talk to us at our company about this new simulator we're building, give us some tips. And so I got a few consulting jobs. So that added to
mm,
the revenue that's coming in. But more important than that, it led to promotions and job offers. And so
mm,
eventually I was offered jobs in the industry that I think would never have come my way if I was just another person working in the industry, just another person with 10 years of experience and then 10, 15 years of experience. There are hundreds of people with the same amount of experience and with a better college education than I have.
mm,
Um, but I developed a reputation by teaching these courses as somebody who knew how things worked. And so I
mm,
got offered, at least on two occasions, and then a third incidental tangent one, a job that otherwise I would never have. So it helped me move up in my career um, beyond what I would have been able to move to without teaching these classes. I didn't expect that. I wasn't aware that a reputation like that would be a seed that would grow into a reputation that would lead to more advanced job offers. And so when I started getting those kind of job offers, suddenly I'm much more passionate because I realized keep this ball rolling because there's another job better beyond this.
Wow, that's really great. And do you want to tell us, a bit about your mindset about traditional education? Because just listening to you, I can tell that you have broken out of the box that most people allow themselves to stay in
Hmm.
for untold periods of time, and then they just bury their gifts because they are boxed in by the traditional institutions that they've been to. And so people are chasing after degrees and chasing after certificates. So I'm asking you, as someone who has been there and done that, but you did all of that and you still were able to monetize your creativity. You were
Yeah,
still able to do something that was not necessarily what you studied in school, while taking advantage of the experiences you gathered when you went through the four walls of the traditional institution. So,
right.
what do you have to say about the people who are unable or who are yet to break out of the box of traditional institutions, who think that more certifications is what will make them creative, of which I do not believe so? How do you help these people to have a change of mind and to see and think differently?
Yeah. You've touched one of my hot buttons here. So I did go to graduate school multiple times, in fact, and I did pay for the tuition to get master's degrees and a PhD degree. Um, I did it at a time when the price of those degrees was 1/100th of what they're charging now.
Wow.
So higher education, particularly universities, have skyrocketed the price of tuition. And I think it's criminal what they're charging now for this education. It's really horrible. Um, there's wonderful knowledge to be had there. And I think in most um, organizations of higher education, most universities, what they're offering is a valuable product, but they're
Mm,
overcharging for it by a factor of 10, if not more. They're just the prices are outrageous, and the only reason that has been possible is because of student loans that can't be forgiven, that people keep
mm,
away from, and then the sales pitch that comes along with it. Anyway, well, let's get off the negative part and move on to the positive part. Um,
okay.
Now, a lot of what you need to be able to do is accessible through certifications. And so, if you can't afford a college degree, especially a graduate degree, which usually costs more than an undergraduate degree, um, you can get that same knowledge from online courses. That's an option.
Mm,
Um, and those are a fraction. Like in Coursera, I learned so deep learning that came before generative AI. Deep learning didn't exist when I was in graduate school studying computer science. So I had to learn
mm,
it from Coursera, but I was paying for a whole course, I'd pay like $50 or maybe
mm,
$100. And I could afford a dozen courses when that's all it cost. So I learned a lot of it from, Coursera, and there's several EduWorks and other places like that. Now that LLMs are out there, I think you can get a lot of that knowledge directly out of the generative AI large language models. Now, the problem
mm,
is because you're a novice, you won't know how to ask for that knowledge. So
mm,
it's there and it's possible for it to give it to you, but you don't know, and you shouldn't know. You don't know the structure or how to get that. Um,
yeah.
I think there's possibly two ways that, and these are probably business ideas. Here's some business ideas. So presume that you want to create a business like Coursera or EduWorks, um, or Udemy and all those, but you don't want it to be lectures from professors and you don't want it to work that way. You want it to be cheaper, $5 a month. Yeah, let's say $5 a month. You could take the curriculum from a full college degree program and structure that so that the answers to what do you need to learn and what exercise you need to do are not being prepared by a human professor, they're being prepared by an AI.
Mm.
And so the value added that you're giving is that structure that a person who's trying to learn this doesn't know to ask the LLMs for this knowledge in this order, but you do know. And so you're not creating the material of the online course, you're just creating the structure that asks the LLMs to create it for you. And I think that's worth a number like $5 a month of a subscription, something like that.
Yeah. Yep. And that really makes sense. Now I'm going to ask you one more question
Uh-huh.
potentially, and that would be the background for that question would be this. You mentioned how that after your 9 to 5, you would spend your 5 to 9, working on your other passions and your creative work
Hmm.
and your you know developing your curriculum or your courses, right? And one big problem most creatives have is that they don't have time to work on their creative
Hmm.
side to develop their gifts and turn that into profitable creations. And so they blame it on their 9 to 5. I had some individuals reach out to me and tell me that they felt stuck in a job in their mid 40s. They had become successful in that job, according to them, but they felt stuck because they were passionate about something else. They had something inside of them. They wanted to give expression, but they didn't just have time. And so they felt like they needed to quit their job to do it. And for me, I was like, no, you have to understand that you need to unlock your creativity to actually deal with that while you're on the job before you actually quit it. So if you cannot do something with what you already have while you're on the job, quitting it won't change it. You may just quit and still not do anything. That was my advice to
Yeah,
that
that's
person.
true.
And
Yeah.
so I wanted to get your perspective and your advice and counsel to someone out there right now who is in that 9 to 5 grind, and their 5 to 9 is probably spent, on the couch binging on Netflix, or maybe their 9 to 5 grind is not just a 9 to 5 grind, but a 9 to 9 grind. So they basically are fagged out after work. What do you have to say to them, and how did you deal with that in your own journey?
I think you were very wise in advising them that if you feel like you can't do this in your spare time, maybe you're blaming it on your day job, but that's not really the cause. Maybe you just don't have the motivation to do it. And if you quit your
Hmm.
job, you still might not do it. I think that was very wise of you to tell them. That's exactly right.
Hmm.
I was lucky. I had a 9 to 5 job. I didn't have a 9 to 9 job. If you have a 9 to 9, I can't relate to you. But I had a 9 to 5, and I would spend at least 1 hour every evening working on my course material. Sometimes two,
Hmm.
but at least one. And I am married, and I had 2 children at the time. They were small at the time. So that was time that I took away from the family. Um,
Hmm.
in the evenings. That's why it was maybe 1 hour, maybe two, because I would
Hmm.
realize I was taking that time away from them. And then I would spend a big portion of Sunday doing a lot of work. So I got a lot
Hmm.
done on Sunday. But at the time, because our children were small, Saturday was a dedicated family day. So every
Hmm.
Saturday, it was the family doing something together. There was no work. I was lucky. My job didn't tap me for much Saturday work.
Hmm.
But that's when we would go to, I live in Florida. We'd go to the beach, or we'd go to a theme park, or we'd go to do something fun in a park. But I had that Saturday. So I did sacrifice time with my family during the week and on Sunday, but I tried to make up for it by giving them a full Saturday of attention and time and personal touch time. But I think you're right. It's you. If you're 9 to 5, you probably have enough time and enough energy left over that you can still build something, and you should start.
Wow, thank you. And I thank you for putting the spin on family there too, because part of the challenge that most creatives also face is when they have kids, they have a spouse, they have a partner, it becomes even more challenging.
Yeah.
The complexity of running the 9 to 5 gets even more complex, get even more daunting when you add kids, young kids, and all of that. So but if you have the motivation, you figure it out. You find a way. Where
Mm.
there's a will, there's a way. And I think that is a very, very unique spot and sweet spot to bring our conversation to a close. I don't know if you have any parting words before I officially shut down our conversation. If you do, please go for it.
I think anybody who's listening, if you have that creative urge inside of you, nobody's going to come and kick you into doing it. You're going to have to self
Mm.
kick yourself, and you're not going to be ready. Don't wait till you're ready. You're never going to be ready. Just kick yourself and fall into it and get started.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Roger Smith. It was a pleasure
Yes.
to have you on the show. And I'm super grateful and excited that we were able to really unpack value in our conversation today. To you on the other side, if this was a great conversation to listen to, why don't you listen to it again? Because I believe there were some things that were said that you probably need to hear again and again and again. And if that's also you, why not share with someone else out there and help them turn their ideas to increase income and go from concept to cash flow while leveraging the artificial intelligence capabilities in the world out there. On this note, I'll bring it to a close and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Until then, bye bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.